Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Cup Duet Reviews. My name is Jillian Robinson. I am your associate producer here at Cup of Hemlock Theatre. And today I'm joined by the fabulous Mackenzie Horner, one of our co-artistic producers. How are you doing, Mackenzie?
I'm doing fantabulous. I mean, getting out to see some live theater after so long of not being able to do that. I got to see you in Rent last weekend, and now I got to see this beautiful production we were talking about. We have more lined up too, which just makes me uber excited that we can officially say the arts community is roaring back with some fire,
Absolutely. So yeah, let's just cut right to it today. Mackenzie and I have the ultimate privilege and honor of reviewing TranscenDance Project, a Grimm night. It's choreographed and directed by Julia Cratchley, and the music is composed by Owen Belton, and it contains a handful of top-notch, fabulous, stunning dancers, artists in and around the Toronto area. Mackenzie and I are huge fairy tale fans, Disney and Grimm brothers alike. So we absolutely felt enthralled and enchanted and welcomed by this stunning production, in which it was an immersive theater experience that happened at the Great Hall on Queen Street West. And it utilized their main hall space, it utilized their boudoir space, it utilized their basement space. And basically
upstairs.
A balcony, exactly. Yeah, so we'll unpack this further as we kind of can continue the episode, but immersive theater is where you follow the characters and you kind of choose your own adventure, and that alone is very fairy tale-esque. And Mackenzie and I had the opportunity of speaking with some of the artists post-show. They were all genuine, kind individuals. Again, we will unpack more and more of that. But before we get ahead of ourselves, we'll do the usual intro. Mackenzie, what is in your cup today?
Well, today I am drinking my favorite Crystal Light grapefruit tangerine, a nice orangey, springy drink, just some nice watery, icy drink just to kind of keep the throat nice and cool,
Perhaps from the fairy tale gardens. Yes,
a
fresh,
citrusy.
Actually,
that'd be a really good drink. Yes.
Yeah, seriously.
How about you, Jill?
Yes, my ensemble, as you can see, even with the lighting, I kind of had a bit of a night mystical feel. I'm wearing a bodysuit, so kind of like a ballerina vibe. It's got some lace decal. I'm wearing this scarf shawl vibe. Our stepmother had a bunch of choreography with the scarf, so that's, and also Maleficent's color palette I'm kind of channeling as well, with the dark lips and the dark eyes. And my earrings, they're like little hanging leaves. So again, to pay homage to our beautiful foliage set garnishes. And my beverage is a little bit of rosé bubbly.
Like a briar rose.
Like a briar rose, exactly, to commemorate one of our leading ladies. And part of the experience, Mackenzie and I received a complimentary bubbly sip of bubbly beverage. So this is a rosé champagne that I'll be sipping on today. So Mackenzie, there's so much like a fairy tale energy running through my veins right now. But I guess, so let's kind of roll back to what I was saying of how this was an immersive theater experience. And between the two of us, I guess let's walk our audience, our listeners, through the door of what we experienced the minute we went into the Great Hall. So I don't know if you want to kick us off.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so you arrive at the venue, and there's a security guard outside checking you in. And then when you arrive inside, you are checked in again on the guest list. And they give you a sheet of paper, like so, that you do not open until you get the go-ahead from the MC of the night. You're also given, I don't have it because you had to give it back to the bar, but we were also given like an Alice in Wonderland type bottle that they said, provide this at the bar and you will receive a bubbly drink. And then you head up the stairs to the Great Hall. And before you enter the Great Hall, you are presented with a mask, as worn by Jill here. So let's say we all look very interesting in our lower face mask, with the upper face mask. It was a look, let me tell you. It was a look. And I mean, and it was kind of interesting. It was a very mysterious, that candelabras everywhere. It felt very Phantom of the Opera, like layer there with the mask, and they had the atmospheric haze going.
Mhm.
And then right off the get-go, you're put into this space with the music by Owen Belton, kind of
Mhm.
quiet in the background. You had, I'm just gonna get their names right here. You have Clayton Gray, who comes out as the master of ceremonies, starts interacting with the audience, starts reading his version of the Grimm fairy tales sporadically throughout. At the same time, you
Yep.
have this beautiful dancer, Bree Clark, who is playing this nymph with antlers, who is literally doing like her own performance of the Jellicle Ball Cats routine here, where it's like she literally just never stopped moving. She was
Yep.
slinky and very ethereal, very aerial from
You
Tempest.
said at one point, Mac, and I totally agree. It was like every joint what had its own specificity.
Yes,
Mhm.
extreme like that. It was so much like that. And I was just impressed because we got there a little bit early. Like the show didn't start till I want to say 7:45 by the time
Mhm.
all was going and going. So we were there 10 to 7. So basically, once we were in the space, I want to say after 7 o'clock, Bree just emerged from behind a covered piano and was just getting you in the headspace of there's going to be performers around you. They're going to
Yeah.
be beckoning you, kind of warming up the audience, as you said, Jill, to kind of get the energy going. And then basically, once the show starts, they close the doors and they announce, okay, everybody, you're going to be beginning this story from the past. Basically, open your letters, and then the letters all have their own message. So mine read,
Yes.
there's
What
an
did you
invitation, I hear. Head to the boudoir to find out the details. A.
Mm,
And what did yours say,
okay.
Jill?
Mine said, "A party awaits. A beautiful girl has been born. Join us in the main hall. FF and M."
Mm. So that must
Mhm.
be for the fairies,
Yes.
I guess, is for you. And then A, I don't know who A
Mhm.
would have been for
Oh,
me.
what our stepsisters' names were Agatha and Anastasia.
Oh,
So
maybe. Okay, that's the
potentially,
case. That could be them.
oh, sorry, Agatha. Agatha's stepmother, played by
Yeah.
the astonishing Evelyn Hart, which
True.
we will talk
Yes.
more about.
Yes.
But our stepsisters, apologies, were Anastasia and Drizella. So I believe Agatha probably would have invited you to the boudoir.
Probably. That makes sense. That makes sense. So basically,
But
once
again, we'll probably talk about this too. But with immersive theater in a piece like this, there's a lot of unknowns. Like,
so many
again, we'll
unknowns.
talk more about this where one person might think this is what you saw, or this is what this means, or this is who this is from. But then
Yes.
someone else who saw it from a different angle or from a different time of the show may have a different response.
Well, I mean, when you and I first met Clayton playing Master of Ceremonies, we were assuming that he was either one of the princes
Mm-hmm.
or one of the fairies of the space because he was interacting with this other ethereal creature. So it was like, are these the two fairies at the ball? Because we knew one of the
Right.
stories was based on Sleeping Beauty.
Mm-hmm.
So we were kind of getting the vibe there. But once again, it's not till afterwards you kind of sit back and go, so no, I was this. We won't reveal who he was because that is a surprise for the audience.
Yep.
He's just the master of ceremonies, but it's a lot of fun. So basically, once you're given your go ahead sheet, Jill and I then went our separate ways and had two
Mm-hmm.
very different experiences. I
Very
mean, we
different.
kind of crossed paths very briefly at certain moments,
Yes.
but then because we'd agreed to make sure we were seeing different things at different times, we would
Mm-hmm.
try and split up. So even if you're watching the same moment, we
Mm-hmm.
went to different areas to get a different vantage point. Like
Yep.
I never, for example, went down to where the tree was in the basement. I always stayed on the upper balcony where the
Oh, that's
spindle
so
was. So
fascinating.
I
Okay.
always watched all those sequences from a bird's eye view. I never went right down
Wow. Okay.
into it. So yeah, basically once we split up, and it's kind
Mhm.
of your own adventure. And
Mhm.
Jill, why don't
Yeah.
you kick us off with what was your track
Sure.
for the night, and then
So,
I'll tie back
yeah,
in with what I was up to the whole night, and then we'll kind of tie back in with more cast crew
totally.
thoughts. You know?
Yes, I think that's wonderful. So I personally had experience with immersive theater. I had the opportunity of seeing Sleep No More a couple years back in New York City. based on the Scottish play. And that one was a bit more elaborate. There was more levels and more corridors. And so seeing that show, I didn't feel like I got sort of like a full potential beginning, middle, and end, because there was just like it was a bigger space and a bigger tracks to fill. What I really enjoyed about this experience was, like I had said before, there was a main hall, there was a boudoir space, and there was a basement space. A basement space that did have a balcony where Mac is saying there was a bird's eye view, or you could be on the floor adjacent to the performers happening. And so kind of coming in with the sort of checklist of how do you do in immersive theater? What should you do? And immediately I said, Mac, we need to go our separate ways, because that's the one tip I will always say is the thing with immersive theater is you really do have to, if you want to get your money's worth, you want to get your own experience, choose your own adventure, and also be bold. Like immersive theater, the actors, the players, it's their job to want to invite you in. And so I really stuck to my guns of, if a character is enticing you, captivating you, follow them, be so close to them, right? And because they're performing in every nook and cranny of the building, right? Like we got the parameters of, here's the boudoir, basement, main hall, but then characters would be acting as they move up the staircase or into the hallways. And quite literally, Sarah McDonald, who played our Rose, I remember there's one point where she was catapulting off of Sam Darius, who plays one of our fairies, backs in the staircase, and the fairies would dance upon the staircase. So there was just, in my mind, I kind of let myself have the freedom of bumping all over the place, just picking up an energy and riding with it. So I went in knowing that I probably won't have a beautifully woven story to tell at the end of this. Now, what really was lovely, before I kind of unpack the particulars, is I had my phone pretty much in my satchel the whole night, because again, I was like, I'm in a storybook, I'm in a fairy tale. Like Mac was saying, live theater is coming back. There was all the feels. I'm like, I'm going to put my phone away and just let things hit me. So I wasn't really keeping an eye of the time. But there was an instance of the experience where I found myself in an environment where I was seeing what I had already seen. And again, having immersive theater experience, the piece plays over at least twice, if not sometimes 3 or 4 times, so that folks can, if you decide to follow one character throughout, you can follow that trajectory and get that story. And then as it starts over, you can go marry yourself to another character, et cetera, et cetera. So once I found myself seeing the same dance sequence at one point, I was like, okay, they've started over. So I realized, okay, the first cycle was done. And now my sort of the second time around, my trajectory was a bit different, in a sense that I was like, cardio dance party time, because I'm going to run up and down staircases to just make sure that I'm seeing something different. Mm-hmm. So by the end of the night, it's funny because I felt like I got pretty much the meat and potatoes of both pieces, but not chronologically. And because the like Mac was saying, and we were unpacking, it's predominantly the tale of Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty happening interwovenly. So the characters don't necessarily interact, but the spaces, sometimes when they're shifting, going from one space to another, they pass each other. Or there was a sword fight happening between Prince Charming and Prince Philip at one point. So both of those.
There was?
Yes.
I never saw that the entire night.
So that was an instance this is neat, because in each other's stories, their scene partner was probably just a jousting partner, or just another prince of the land, or just someone else, right? But then as the viewer, those are your princes. So they were complementing each other's stories, not impeding or providing conflict for each other's stories. But so by the end of my night, I felt like we went through 2 cycles of the piece.
I agree, 2 cycles, yeah.
Maybe it was 3. Again, that's the beautiful thing of immersive theater. You kind of leave and you're hit with whatever you got hit with, and you're welcome to go back and, try to find a new trajectory. But I felt at the end, I had a really good grasp on seeing pivotal moments of each story, as well as seeing like some vulnerable personal moments that I don't think I would have seen or paid much more attention to if it was just like a start to finish process. So that was kind of like an overview of my experience. So intricately, I guess how I'll do this, because as I've said, everyone's experience will be different. And it kind of probably won't make sense if I kind of track out. To be honest, I don't really remember the exact specifics, but I'm going to highlight some of the really cool things I saw. So I was in the main hall, as according to my invitation. I started in the main hall, and silly Jill was like, I didn't piece together of the baby being born. Yes, that's how Sleeping Beauty starts, right? It's the baby being born, and she's donned with these fairy godmothers. So at first, the first 10 minutes, I was like, oh, this is like young Cinderella. We're getting like a jovial perspective or whatever. But then halfway through, I was like, no, these are our fairies and this is Rose, right? But there was very minimal dialogue in this because it was TranscenDance Project. Predominantly, it was ballet and contemporary and lyrical dance. Yeah. And we can unpack this later too, but I loved the language was dance. And when instances were intense and dance couldn't express that intensity, natural lines would come out of the actor's mouth. So similarly with musicals, you have the instance of when the emotion is bottled up so much, the only thing we can do from talking is sing. With this, it was, if dance can't express it, words can. So that was really neat to kind of get in on. So anyways, I stood for about 15 minutes and watched this beautiful unraveling of Rose, and played by Sarah McDonald, who was impeccable. She had such like an innocence and a playfulness. She was giggling, so fluid. And there are three fairies, Dana McDonald, Tyler Agnell, and Sam Darius, were just honestly like the witches in Sleep No More. They were the guides for me a lot in my trajectory. I found if I was ever like, I don't know where I should go, I was like, let's find the fairies, because the fairies I know are going to lead me to something interesting or do something interesting themselves. So it was really cool how it was almost like Rose, I saw her go through puberty, like the way and how that was expressed in dance, and how the intonation of the music was changing, and the fairies were trying to protect her in certain moments, but then also like let her go in certain moments. And there was just this beautiful relationship provided there. And then when the music dampened, that's when we had our evil queen come out, played by Joey Arrigo. And oh my goodness, they were like titillating. Like I had chills down my spine. So yeah, so that's why I was like, okay, I just witnessed the beginning of Sleeping Beauty. And then that's when I kind of went off and I explored, and a couple other moments that are just picking out to me. So our stepsisters. So in Cinderella's track, we had Anastasia and Drizella, and they were always together, and they were sort of like, in my opinion, the evilest force of that story. And I saw this beautiful fight sequence twice, actually. The first one was when Cinderella entered the space, and it's the moment when Cinderella had stitched one of them a skirt and it wasn't to their liking, and a like mean girl bully grotesque fight like immersed in in the tiny boudoir space. And it was so yummy, like just like, yeah, astonishing. And to see like all three actors had such poise and such beauty, and to see them be so visceral, and it really, to me, like, and so up close, right? It just kind of unearthed like, holy cow, humans can be a bitch. That's my swear word. Yeah, so there's that little snapshot to share. So again, where we're on that same thing, I saw the end. The second time around, I was able to see the end of the Cinderella piece, and this was in the main hall. And our stepmother, Agatha, perishes after Cinderella and Prince Charming kind of lay down the line and say, like, we're going to be together. And Evelyn Hart, who plays Agatha, it's like taken aback and actually like faints, or, like grows weary off the stage. And then you saw this shift of to me, like the stepsisters were like vying for who's going to take over the household or who's going to take over. So this giant fight started happening between the two of them. And this was like such an interesting thing because in the Great Hall, there were so many pillars lining the space, and I was standing right up against one. So I kind of flirted a little bit with space. There was times where I got real close, or the times where I would sit on something or lean on something, but knowing, if actors come into space, then, read the room and give them the space. Mm-hmm. And so I was standing at this pillar, and Cinderella and the actors playing Cinderella and Prince Charming right beside me, and they kind of edged their way closer and closer and closer to me. And so the actor impulse in me is like, okay, counter block, because they're getting really close. Something's happening. And right as I stepped back, one of the stepsisters, their fight choreo came flying into the pillar and used it as like a brace. So to see those actors make sure, right, the space was safe, or that I was safe, or that the choreo, they kind of in character like shepherded me away, and then they were integrated into the fight too. So that was a really cool shift. I was like, oh my goodness, would they have entered the fight that close if it wasn't for me, right, standing there? So then there was a giant fight that ensued between the four of them. And then it kind of ended with a stepmom with a dagger like coming above one of their heads, and then the lights went out. So that was like a really interesting happily ever after, or maybe not. I remember Clayton Gray, who played our MC, kind of capped off with that. Yes. Another really awesome, I'll pin one more thing and then I'll pass it to you back, because I could talk literally the entire volume of Brothers Grimm's fairy tales version of my experience. There it is. So yeah, so I saw the fight, the sword fight happen between the princes, which was really lovely. I love sword fight in pieces, and it was the fight direction in this entire piece was impeccable and stunning and very realistic and very safe, which me as like the stage manager fight person, I'm like, yes. So it was the instance when, so this was in the basement area, and it was Briar Rose's track, and the fairies were there, and the evil queen shows up, and a single rose was suspended from the ceiling.
Oh yes, or she pricks on the rose, yeah.
Right, and so she pricks on the rose, and
that scream
instantly, that scream is brilliant. But instantly, her and the fairies go down, and Prince Philip arrives on the scene, and through movement, through motion, through realization, there's like a force field that the queen has conjured up around the beings. He can't get to Sleeping Beauty. And I had my bubbly in my hand at the moment. I kind of wish I didn't, because you could tell he noticed us as spectators and was looking at us and inviting. So a lot of the actors would do that. They would invite you in. They would, say like, come. They would sometimes say like, come or follow. And so he was kind of, reading the room and seeing who was free to kind of grab. And all of a sudden he locked eyes with one audience member and sort of asked them to come to this force field. And he raised his arms, and the audience member kind of realized, oh, I should do that too. Like it was like an instant, like a mirroring technique thing. And then they both lowered together. And then as that motion stopped, Prince Philip was able to enter. So that was really cool, because it was like through the audience's help, or the spectators' help, he was able to puncture through to get to Sleeping Beauty.
So was it just one person he got when you?
It was just the one.
Okay,
yeah.
So when I saw it, he got 3 audience members to all.
Oh, okay, nice, neat. Yeah, just absolutely stunning, flawless. A couple little like behind the scenes moments that, again, with my stage manager brain, it was on to halfway through this piece. I was like, are these actors getting water? Where are their water? And you could see in character. I remember once Kelly Shaw playing Cinderella, she was like sitting in the balcony area, which easily could be like the rafters of like a barn, or like her attic that maybe she lives in or something. And she had like this glass water and was like sitting there drinking it, but still in character, right? But like as the actor, meaning like, I got to get my water in. So like, again, stage manager mama and me was like, yes, good, get your water in. But all those moments were just baked into the piece. So again, it was immersive, right? There was no like, and this is closed and now you go on to the next. It wasn't like a point A, point B, point C. It was, no, you can follow me and you can come on my journey, or you can, just because you were invited to the main hall to start, you don't have to stay there. And yeah, it was lovely. The eye contact too, especially because we were masked in the eyes and a lot of the times on the mouth, unless we were sipping a beverage. The eyes were the only point of communication from the audience to them. And so the eye contact was impeccable. And, they say the eyes are the windows of the soul. And I just felt so welcomed and inspired by each character. Little girl Jill in me was living a fairy tale fantasy, that's for sure. And just such genuine, passionate performers. We had the opportunity to speak with a lot of them, and Julia Cratchley herself, the director, choreographer, mastermind behind this whole piece. And this project was projected to go up like March 2020. And then due to the pandemic, it got postponed. It was supposed to go up again this January. Due to Omicron, it was postponed. And so finally they were able to do it this past weekend. And you can just tell there was an anticipation and an instilled simmering passion that a lot of these performers were bringing to it too. So I'm going to dog ear that chapter of the fairy tale novel and pivot to you, my dear friend.
Oh, I mean, for me, so I studied devised theater at York, which means you get to learn all about immersive theater. There was a year ahead of me that did a trip to New York to see the Sleep No More production, and for some reason I couldn't go. I forget why. There was something going on that I just wasn't able to get a chance to go over. But we got to see some other local stuff. We also got to try it ourselves. So we actually our show was a house party.
Oh, cool.
That goes wrong type thing. So that was really fun. I had a little experience with this. So for me, it was unlike Jill, who was like one of the fairies in the show who was bipping and bopping around. I was much more stationary. Like I would sit, or no, I actually never sat. I would stand in a location until I felt the sequence was fully over and they were already migrating to their next spot. So I got to see longer chunks of a story. So I start with Cinderella, right, in the boudoir is where I begin. So I started watching the stepmother, Evelyn Hart's character, at the window doing her routine with her locket and jewels, and then all of a sudden I start hearing this screaming or this banging going around behind me, and I spin around and it's the fight between the stepsisters and Cinderella that had been going on behind me that I hadn't quite clocked yet. So I came in midway to it, and I mean, for me, what it immediately reminded me of is what Jerome Robbins came up with in West Side Story, which is they fight through the dance. Like if you watch their moves, it was very much almost like the Rumble fight, where it's like a fouette kick or a lash of an arm means something in a fight, but it's not quite what it would be in a regular combat, where it's like there's only one moment where they do like a proper stage slap, and that is
when Cinderella melts down the wall.
Yes.
Is that the one you're talking about? Yes.
Yes, yep. Correct. In the boudoir, like when they're doing the thing and she's already been abused, had her hand stepped on and everything, and she kind of fights back for a moment. And it's the stepmother who steps in afterwards. But yeah, I mean, right away, the three of them, Evelyn Hart playing Agatha the stepmother, then you had Martha Hart playing Anastasia, and Julia Castino playing Drizella. The three of them together had such amazing chemistry with each other. In particular, like Agatha kind of had her own journey she was going on, but the stepsisters alone, you watch the two of them, and the fact that, so I will update the audience that I got a chance because one of my theater friends there was invited to come see a workshop of some sequences that was going on.
Right.
Way back in the end of 2019, start of 2020. I can't remember which part it was in. Either way, I did get to see a rehearsing segments of this, like little snippets of something. And I wasn't sure if this was the same thing because it sounded familiar before I went, and I was like, is it the same workshop? I'm not going to say anything until I see the cast enough. Evelyn Hart is such a memorable force that the minute I saw them, I was like, okay, I know. I've seen parts of this piece before, and sure enough, the clarity that was given over this extended time has
Yeah.
really allowed the dance to become
Mhm.
less interpretive, as sometimes dance pieces can become, which can be frustrating for the non-dancers when you watch them and it's like, I don't know what the heck is going on here. The clarity that
Yep.
Julia brought to this piece, because when we talked to her, she said the amount of time I've had to sit with this piece
Yeah.
and just stayed on it really showed,
Mhm.
because every part of the story, no matter where you popped in on, you were immediately able to go, I got it. I know what's happening.
Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, so I watched her in the boudoir with the whole getting ready to go to the ball moment. There was a moment where Cinderella rushes out and Agatha goes off somewhere else. And then I was left with the stepsisters getting ready, putting on their collars and everything. And then I
Mhm.
migrate into the Great Hall to watch the ball sequence where they're dancing. And that's really where you saw between the two couplings of Briar Rose or Rose and her prince and Cinderella and her prince, were just how good Julie is, because she made them different. It'd be very
Yep.
easy to have them fall into the same kind of lyrical dance moves. But
Mhm.
what you watched is Cinderella and her prince were much more sensual and mature in their dance. Like there was a sexual energy to that one. There was a coupling of maturity where they know
Yep.
what's going on. They're
Yep.
hot and heavy for each other. Well, when you watch Rose and her Prince Philip, there's a much more younger naivete
Mhm.
in that dance. Like it's that once upon a dream moment, right? Like it's that I'm getting to know
So, quick
you.
question: were they both these couples were dancing in the main hall?
No, they're
Okay. Sorry.
separately.
Okay.
But what haven't you had a chance
Right.
to watch both tracks? It's
Right.
two
Right. Right. Okay.
different.
For a second, I was like, Mac, did you see them both in the same space? I was like, that's so cool.
No. Well, I
Right.
mean, there was a moment where when we were coming in for the ball, Sleeping Beauty was leaving in her like
Yes.
white nightgown
Yes.
jumper outfit. So there was a cross path moment between the two
Mhm.
princesses. They
Mhm.
never kind of
Mhm.
fully acknowledge each other. I'm into the Great Hall, watching the ball sequence. Agatha leaves, goes home. The stepsisters do some more shenanigans with the prince, trying to keep her away from Cinderella. They end up together, and then there's the famous clock chimes, and you're back to the boudoir basically to do the next sequence. And this is a part that was really neat. Was basically you get the whole classic next morning afterwards. Proclamation goes out. We found the shoe. We're gonna find the girl. Blah 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 blah. So you're in the boudoir with the stepsisters and the stepmother and Cinderella. The stepsisters are doing their thing on their side of the boudoir, getting changed, whatever. And Agatha has this really beautiful moment with Cinderella in the mirror. That's also very sinister because she's putting necklaces on Cinderella the whole time,
Yeah.
and I thought she was going to choke her out at one point. I was
Okay.
like, because these are very sinister step family here.
Yes. 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 Yes.
They're not as nice, or they're not as
Mhm.
subtle with their villainous ways there. So at one point, Agatha finds the shoe hiding under one of the chaise lounge.
Okay.
And so she finds and just chucks the shoe at Cinderella in anger. Like that shoe went flying. Like thank God. I'm sure they rehearse it to know
Yeah. Yeah.
where they got to throw it, where their audience most likely won't be, because
Yeah.
audiences
Yeah. Yeah.
are very. I mean, we are sheeple in this moment where people congregate together basically. Like they don't. Like, you wouldn't think we spread out as far as we do. Where it's
Yep.
kind of like there are corners of the room where like nobody went over into Agatha's dressing room corner. That area was
Yep.
always
Yeah.
somehow there was like a
Well,
massive,
especially with certain characters too, you could tell there was like a territory.
yes,
Even I didn't fully go into the queen, the evil queen. Sorry, just as like interject
yeah,
really quickly. The evil queen had like their lair
yeah,
in the balcony area of the main hall, and
yeah,
I didn't fully go. You could. They
yeah,
actually beckoned someone to come follow them there once, but I was like, ooh,
yeah.
I don't think I should go there.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so she throws the shoe, and then just like in the Disney movie, when the prince is coming, the stepmother locks Cinderella in the room to keep her from getting to the prince. Well, sure enough, that's what they did. Like Agatha very quickly gets to the door, and I was like, they're not actually going to do this to us, are they? Sure enough, that door, those boudoir doors close, and there's a click. Now, I don't think they actually fully locked it. I think
Yeah,
because I saw later on there's really just someone standing outside the door.
yeah, yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure if there was an emergency, they could just get in and really easily. But it was
Mhm.
important enough that like you are locked into this space now. So basically, what we then got was a Cinderella solo piece.
That's
where
awesome. I
she
didn't get
was
to see
doing
that. Yeah.
pacing around the space. At one point, she ends up on her head as she's doing contortion kind of moves and thinking. And the audience was starting getting too because there were keys left on a table. So the lady was like, "Should I go give her the keys? Like what's going on?"
Oh,
And then at one point,
yeah.
she goes into Agatha's dresser and finds the key locked in a box. She had to the audience try and open the box, kind of like how
Okay.
Prince Philip gets him to bring down the force field.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was there, and once again, it was 3 and 3. Like they went through 3 people, that type of thing. So we get the door unlocked, and then Cinderella says go, and everybody gets out. So I thought, okay, well, I guess that's the wrap up of their story for now. We'll somehow at the end they'll converge with each other, and we'll see like maybe a
Mhm.
master fight in the Great Hall, some type of bigger thing where the two stories converge into
Yep.
one. Wasn't the case, but that's okay. So we get out, and then I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, I guess now I'm off to the Sleeping Beauty story. So sure enough, I go into the
Oh,
Great Hall.
okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
Because when you were in there, so I think just trajectory wise, now it's so funny. I'm going to play detective. When you were in there with Cinderella, the steps, I'm pretty sure what was happening in the main hall, which I saw the second track, the stepsisters and the stepmom go to the main hall, which is like the prince's palace. And
Mm.
they like do the whole like shave off the heel, squeeze it
Oh, they
into
did
the
that
foot.
moment. Oh, see,
They
I
did
was
that
hoping
moment.
they would do.
And then the prince would take them for a little
Yeah.
spin, and then they would faint or fall.
Oh.
So there was that bit. It cycled through the two
Okay.
stepsisters, and then when Cinderella said "go" with
Mhm.
you,
Mhm.
I would imagine you all cleared, and then her next thing, maybe this is right or wrong, did like a costume change back into the gown,
Maybe.
and then she enters to the main space, and then that's, I
Okay.
already described this big fight thing that ensues
Okay. So see, I
at
didn't
the
get to
end
see
of their
if they were
story. So there you
right.
go. So
So
there's the
that's
end of
probably what
Cinderella.
happened. Because there was something happening at the very end when I got into the Great Hall. And then they left, and then
Mhm.
the Sleeping Beauty story was going with the 3 fairies and Briar
Mhm.
Rose and the Evil
Mhm.
Queen doing their kind of staff fight, puberty
Yep.
dance in the white
Yep.
nightgown routine. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm following this now.
Okay.
So kind of got back into that action. And briefly, I popped back into the VR to see, oh, is there something at the end? But no, they had reset the cycle in there. So I was like, okay, nope, let's stick with Sleeping
We've already been
Beauty.
there. Okay.
So at that point, I went down into the basement because I'd never gone down there. Like I'd seen people go down there, but I was like, I don't know if that's cast only. I don't know. So I was like, well, let's venture down. Sure enough, there's the
Yep.
flowers on the stairs, which is really
Yep.
cool. And so
Yeah.
I end up on the balcony there, and then you get the whole Sleeping Beauty story going. And they also do include some Snow White elements, which are
Mhm.
in the Snow White story, the evil queen tries like 3 different times to kill Snow White. There's a lace bodice she puts on her that chokes her out because she can't breathe. There's a poisoned hair comb that we see, and then there in Snow White's case, it's the poison apple. In this, it was Briar Rose
The
Pricked
rose. Yeah.
on the rose. So I got to watch that whole sequence play out, which was really neat from the balcony. So looking down at this big, beautiful tree, like that
Mhm.
tree was a stunning set piece. And
Yep.
then, sure enough, I turn around at one point and I'm somehow back in the Cinderella story because she's in the basement by her bed and the evil stepmother's there with her. And
Oh,
I
okay.
was like, I never knew that part of the story was going on. But mind you, there was a broom and some lentils or like stuff going on the ground. So that is part of the
Mm.
Cinderella story that she does throw
Yeah.
the lentils into the ashes and says, if you can pick them out in time,
Yeah.
you can come with us to the ball. So I'm guessing there's probably some other elements of the story that I just never
Totally. Yeah, I didn't
got
see
to
that.
see.
Did you see the element at when Cinderella, because that tree also acted as like her mother's tree, because she was
No,
like
never saw
asking
that.
for it. And then basically this was like a really cool exchange. It was a kind of when again the characters kind of flirt in each other's spaces.
Mhm.
Right after Prince Philip's fight, I believe,
Yes, I never
he
saw
kind of
any
went
of
off
it.
to the side, and she was asking the tree, right? Or like,
Yes.
finding solace in the tree. And then she went behind the tree, donned herself did a costume change in the golden
Okay.
gown, and went to the ball. And then Philip kind of came back into the space. Yeah. Yeah.
Shiver and quiver, little tree.
Yes.
Don't go down on me. I'm off to get my
Anyways,
wish. Anyway,
keep
yes.
going with this trajectory. I
Yeah,
feel like,
yeah.
wow, there's so many ways we could have went about this too. We could have unpacked each individual space. We could have,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah, no, so much going on. So yeah, so basically then at one point I started going up the stairs to go back up into the main stage, but then the fairies were coming down the stairs with a heart in their hand. I don't know where they got the heart from, but somehow they got a heart. Don't know what was
That's
going
from
on.
the evil queen. The evil queen, or the evil queen, they give it to the evil queen.
Okay, never saw that poster. I just got coming down the stairs. So I go back down the stairs, and sure enough, there's more to the prick the finger, big final fight, and it wraps up for the night. But once again, like at one point, I did end up in the balcony up in the main hall, and they were looking. Sleeping Beauty was looking in the mirror with the black dress there. So something was going on there. I don't quite know what part of the story of Sleeping Beauty that was, but either way, that's fine.
There was definitely fairy tale sprinklings from every bit. So there were things that, like, if you missed one thing, I think you would have been able to catch up to speed of another thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
Right? Like two different experiences. Yeah, because like the final fight between the fairies, Maleficent, Philip, and Rose was like the full-on West Side Story Rumble, with including knives in there too. That was really fascinating. Like you got some bow staff fighting going on there with Maleficent's staff. You had the short hand dagger fights as well. You also got chains going on because they're chaining Maleficent up.
Shout out to Colleen Snell, our fight choreographer.
That
impeccable. And Jack Rennie, who played Prince Philip, was our fight captain as well.
Yes, it was fantastic.
So good.
They were just really throwing themselves around that space. And like what was great, what I really liked about the Briar Rose story was like when Sarah pricks her finger on the flower, that scream she gives is blood curdling, and then every time Maleficent did something to harm the fairies, they verbally gave out a sound of pain. So like at one point, one of the fairies gets stabbed with one of the daggers by accident during the fight, and sure enough, they gave a ow, like a very verbal sound of I being hit moment. It was really great. So yeah, and then it wraps up with like the death of Maleficent. It was the way my night ended. So it was a fascinating bit of magic there, where like there are elements I never saw, and there are elements you never saw. That I mean, I wish this ran for longer, because I mean, it does wrap up this Easter weekend.
Yes.
So I mean, I wish
it has wrapped up by the time this episode is out. Yeah.
Yes. So I mean, I wish we could have gone back, because I would have done a whole new track and made conscious efforts to shake it up.
Yeah,
I mean, I never saw the Prince fight or anything like that. So I'm like, I would have loved to have seen it just for fun, just to see.
Well, I know talking to Julia, she was saying this was her second sort of project like this, and I hope down the line, and as you know, restrictions keep lightening up as the time goes on, that we see more projects like this, because also like coming out of the last couple of years we've had, it was such a lovely, refreshing, different audience experience where the language that you are following is physical, whether that be through dance or through fight. And we've, the last couple years, unfortunately, we've been isolated. We've been apart from each other's bodies and breaths, and to kind of really be up close and center, like literally in your face with this like movement with precision and passion and guttural responses to each other's relationships. And like you were saying, the chemistry, the synergy in this cast, the amount of times that even if they weren't in each other's tracks, you could tell that they were both telling this masterpiece that was Grimm Night. And it almost made me feel like I hope immersive theater kind of roots itself even more in the city, in Toronto, because it really is. It's like, theater houses were shut down. Literally, we couldn't even sit in our individual velvet chairs. And now you are allowed to touch the performer or look them in the eyes and really break down that fourth wall. And that was just a very cathartic experience for me. And and I think physical, often when we see a piece, especially like a musical or even like a play, it's a lot of it is in text and character we're wrapped up in, and that's the forefront of things. And then gestures and movement and dance and fight are kind of the accessories to the piece, whereas those were the forefront of this piece. And to kind of listen to and follow that language, and a universal language at that, was very lovely. Yeah.
Immersive is such a fascinating bit of theater that
Hmm.
really I wish got done more often everywhere, because I never knew about I knew of the Great Hall. I've never been inside. But just once again, you and I were talking in the pre-show about what type of shows could you do in this space. And I was rattling off a whole bunch. You could do 1776 in there. Like, it has that old timey vibe. You could do what were some of the other ones we came up with? Like, there were so
It's
many
like
shows.
as an event space in general, like a wedding space,
Yeah,
or
easily a wedding space. But there, like you could do so much in that space just to. I mean, that space alone, like, I would love for us to go back and do a production in there. I mean, you could do Sweeney Todd in there easily.
yeah.
Like, there's so much you could do in that
Mhm.
space. And just like, once again, immersive theater is great like that, where
Mhm.
it's just, you get to go into these spaces and just experience them in such a unique way that I guarantee if we went back and saw 1776 in that space, it would be a totally different vibe, different
Yeah.
experience. You would never know that,
Yeah.
this was the same space as Grimm Night, because
Mhm.
it's just a different fluid way. Yeah, I mean, Joe, do you have any shout outs for cast
Yeah,
production
well,
you want to give that we haven't talked about yet?
I was actually just gonna say, like, having these spaces is awesome too, but having it filled with this cast is like some of the top dancers in our city, and like impeccable. The contact improv, the like ballet contemporary, ultra professionalism at most, like just like I felt, I was like, how is this happening? Is this real? Like, these people are superhumans, but the kindest people. Like, also talking with all of them
Very
post show,
good.
like, so down to earth and just majestical. Honestly, there was not, like, every single one of them I want to shout out, because I know, like, knowing that this show was a long time coming, and having them be like ultra passionate on and synergized even when their paths didn't cross, like, that's super difficult to do. And even the stage hands that were, as Mac was mentioning, were placed throughout the space too, to hold certain props or in certain things. They were also very in on it, and you could tell the environment. And a lot of this is probably attributed to Julia Cratchley and the company at whole, but was from the get-go, like, we are a family. Kindness is key.
Yes.
We are operating a beast of a piece, and every team member is integral. And I always say this, when a cast in a company is like that, the work is better tenfold. Like, it transcends work. It becomes an ethereal experience, and something like this, you need that to be at the forefront. And so, just props off to everybody who was flushing in their energy to round that out. Yeah, I've already kind of shouted them out, but I guess I'll spread some extra love to our fairies. Fawn, played by Tyler Agnell, Flora by Dana McDonald, and Fira by Sam Darius. They, all three of them, just, I had a very welcoming vibe and presence from them. And, as sort of tangential character, like, equally as important to support the entire piece of Sleeping Beauty, but they are more so the supporting forces, right? They're not like the protagonists, like Prince Philip and Briar Rose, but that entire story, literally and figuratively, would have crumbled if they weren't those pillars. And quite literally, all three of those dancers' bodies, like I said, were like physically lifting and propelling Briar Rose each step of the way. So literally, the storyline would have crumbled if it wasn't for the three of them acting as such a cohesive unit. And I talked to the three of them afterwards too, and you can tell they
were so
super close off stage as well as being on stage.
There are lots of synergy between them.
Yeah, so that would be, I guess, my extra love shout out. But how about you, Mac? Any?
I mean, once again, the stepsisters were just stunning. Martha Hart and Julia Castino. But I also want to give a really special shout out to Evelyn Hart, who played Agatha, because as I found out from Jill later, she is receiving a star on the Canadian Walk of Fame here in Toronto for her contributions to dance. And I mean, she is the maturest member of that company, but you would never know that, because like, the pace and the dance energy she brought to that piece was wonderful. And she was such a giving artist. Like, afterwards, just speaking with her, and what she showed me was the prop ring that you wore. She goes, I picked it up at the dollar store, but feel the weight of it. Like she was like the energy she brought was very childlike and very youthful. So like you could tell how much she loved this piece and loved the energy with it. And I mean, just the way she carried herself, like that hawkish way she carried, like very much Lady Tremaine from Disney. Like I would totally cast her. Like she also reminded me of the mature version of Kate Blanchett. Like they have that kind of same facial structure to them. I'm like, okay, this is a mature version of a Kate Blanchett. And once again, very deep into her character, like you could tell she wasn't just evil stepmother routine. Like there was heart and pain to this woman in her journey, and just watching her move was just an honor for someone who is really a major staple in the Canadian dance community. To see someone like that perform at such an intimate level, it's just stunning to watch, because it's like, when do you ever get a chance like that to see someone like this, a Canadian Walk of Fame person that literally they are an arm's length away from you. You get to see them do their craft that they've spent a lifetime honing and bringing in. And I believe it is the case that it is her daughter Martha playing the stepsister. I never actually got to confirm if they were related or if they just had the same last name.
Oh, right. Well, because we also have Sarah McDonald, Dana McDonald. I don't know if they're related either, but could also just be happenstance. Their last names are the same.
If it is, that's really neat that mother-daughter got to perform together. But it was just stunning. Like, once again, that the trio of them were great, but each one of them brought something so special. And just watching someone who is a Canadian legend, easily Canadian legend in the dance community, perform a piece like this and keep up and sometimes excel beyond some of the younger cast members, where you just go, oh yeah, like this just goes to show, even if you're getting up there, stay young, stay fit, and you can go for as long as you can. I mean, Rita Moreno's in her 90s and is still out there dancing. So,
well, and it's interesting. I had a really lovely conversation with Tyler Gledhill, who played her Prince Charming, after the show. And he's actually, because this is quite common of dancers, you retire early, right? Because especially in specialized dance like ballet, it's very taxing on the body and on the physique and on the prowess. Exactly. So Tyler was saying that he's thinking of retiring and got into Toronto firefighting. Like he's going to be a firefighter of Toronto. And I'm like, what a wonderful sort of like attribute your, physical determination and sort of responsibility you've given yourself through this specialized craft of dance. And now you're able to like utilize your physique and physical self to pivot to that career, which is, it's incredibly difficult to be a firefighter, and it's very competitive to even get in. And it's like artists, yes, we do what we do to make change and instill impact, but it is still a performance, whereas firefighting and shout out saving. You are saving lives. And so again, such a kind soul and great conversation with Tyler, but I didn't even bat an eye, because it's like, yes, this is so common to retire, or you see dancers come sort of take hiatuses and come back to it and stuff too. And I would definitely second seeing Evelyn, having the privilege and honor of seeing Evelyn perform was a life experience. I could check it off the bucket list.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, I would like to shout out our costume designer, Julia Cratchley. Apologies if I mispronounced your name, but I just thought there was such a beautiful balance of the costuming, of it being, again, this is stage manager mama coming out, but like comfortable for the actors in like a movability wise, and also in like a modest vibe too, especially as a dancer. Right. The last thing you'd want is to feel, figure skaters say this all the time, is to feel like you're being revealed in an uncomfortable way, because then you can't focus on the precision of your craft. Right. So it's very important to find that balance of, I don't even know if this is a word, but revealability, but also comfort. And so I thought that was beautifully done. And it was, I love that each character kind of had like a color pop, right? Like Briar Rose had the soft pink. Our
Yeah.
stepsisters had like red velvet or green velvet. And it
Yeah.
was just like these complementary
Mhm.
colors, but both that, red meaning danger,
Mhm.
passion, and
Yeah.
green meaning envy
Yeah.
and like royalty. Like there
Mhm.
was just um it wasn't simplified and it wasn't elaborate. It was like this beautiful and something that history of fairy tales and having the privilege of reading about them or watching a TV series about them or watching a show about them and even like other series like a Bridgerton that's on right, costuming plays such a vital
Does.
experience or part to our experience
Mhm.
rather. And each time I saw our characters take off a cloak or add a scarf or whatever,
Mhm.
it was like another little sort of flick of the
Yeah.
pixie dust or flick of the
Mhm.
magic
Mhm.
wand. So yeah, it was again another breathtaking aspect of this show for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, before we go, Jill, and give our final thoughts,
Mhm.
was there anything that didn't quite hit the mark for you? Uh, um.
Again with immersive theater, like I feel like it's such an interesting one to critique because
Mhm.
there's kind of that like overarching message
Mhm.
that's instilled in you in the beginning of like you choose your own adventure, so you may not see the traditional beginning, middle, end.
Mhm.
And the fact that it was
Mhm.
based on fairy tales too, and we know the history of fairy tales, they've been morphed into being different things or different adaptations,
Mhm.
highlight different things. So there was that caveat to kind of come in. I guess like the theme of the music and again it's not even like I wish it would change because again it would have to be super precise and something that the actors are very familiar with
Mhm.
in order to hit their marks and be the
Mhm.
destination that they want to be. But I found if there was a little bit more variation into the
Mhm.
like theme of music,
Mhm.
because it started off in our pre-show music was like this ambiance of enchanted forest music that had it lighter colors and also it's darker. Think of like winding vines vibes. And then that just kind of continued throughout the piece and ebbed and flowed depending on what the story needed to tell. Like I got I clued in when we got to the darker moments. Well, I knew if I can't see the evil queen right now, the evil queen is certainly having a solo or a duet bit or something, right? Or if I can't see the stepsisters, then that's happening with them. And then with the lighter stuff, I'm like, oh, okay. If I'm not looking at Cinderella, Briar Rose is probably finding herself. So it was a lovely like the lightness and darkness quality of the music was definitely built into the story. Just maybe a little bit more variation.
I would agree with that. Like, yeah,
But
like Owen Belton did really
yeah,
good. But once again, like just because you have two different storylines going, like like once again, like I don't know how you would do it because you don't want clashing sounds because you do
mhm,
hear sounds from other parts of the building, right? Um, but I mean, I would have loved maybe, as you said, a little bit of different variation, like maybe Cinderella because it's traditionally a French story, or it's what many different versions of it, but like French is kind of a French court type one is one that's known very well. That's the Disney one. It's kind of set in France. So it's like if you did a little bit more of that French boudoir strings versus
mhm,
ethereal, like keep the ethereal music maybe for um Sleeping Beauty because it's all forest and magic versus like a string quartet or something a little bit different. Because I mean, in Britain,
right.
that's what's really fun is the pop music gets done in strings and it sounds really cool and it tells you
Yeah.
something, right? Like once again, music is one of those great tools of differentiating themes and motifs where it's like, hey, Evil Queen's showing up, her motif's gonna show up, and it's gonna give you
Yep.
the heads up that she's coming. Same type of thing there, where it's like little variation would have been great just to kind of separate the stories a little bit more. And it would have been my only other thing was just because I didn't get to see the Cinderella finale. It's what it would have been great because I assumed like, oh, it's done because it's restarted the cycle again. Is just having the MC come on because he's on the loudspeaker at the end, rapping, giving the final
Yes.
message. Where it's like maybe just have him once come on and when the cycle finishes, just say like time to turn the page. Something simple.
Okay, yeah.
Just to show,
Okay.
for cycle
Like a
one,
guidance. Yeah.
done. Because they set him up as the MC of the night with the opening where he's reading and setting the basis of, we're going to go explore these fairy tales, blah, 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 that type of thing. And he comes at the end and goes, the end, question mark? That type of thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you have him at the beginning and the end, and just have him in the middle just to give a really firm clear of, okay, cycle one done. Because for me, because I was stationary a lot, I could follow the stories linearly throughout.
Right.
So the perfectionist me was like, damn, I missed the final, final thing with Cinderella. Would have loved to see that final moment, because I had watched so much of their story already that it's like, crap, I missed like the final 10 minutes of the story. Right. It's like watching a movie all the way through and you skip the big finale of Frodo dropping the ring in Mordor, right? It's like you watch the adventure of Frodo, and at the end you go, oh, okay, I'm now going to go watch The Hobbit. Still a good story, you're missing the final climax of something. So I mean, for me, like, just to ensure everybody gets it, because I know you and I, being immersive theater people who know what it is, came in knowing, okay, turn your brain off in the sense of maybe you won't get the full linear story. Maybe you will only get the segments or snippets. And it's going to be okay if you miss elements. Like, I never saw Cinderella get her dress, or the princess fighting, or Briar Rose at the spinning wheel. That the fairies getting the heart. There were elements of the story I never got to see, which is fine, because overall I still got the bullet points of the story, you know. But just giving it, but right. But then, like, for general audiences who maybe aren't as familiar with immersive, who are still learning and are beginners to this adventure, they may go, "What the hell?" Like, I feel like I feel like I missed a step, and now I'm back where I started, and there's like I'm having a little bit more MC work. Maybe they're just to give a few more prompts to people, because there were some people there who I saw who were kind of confused in the sense of.
Well, here's the thing, to talk on that is, I think this audience too, because this wasn't just immersive theater, this was an immersive dance project. Yes. So a lot of the audience members that we were around, Mac, were probably new audience members that we aren't as familiar with, you and I not being dancers ourselves and not being as well seen in when it comes to the dance environment, right? Like, we don't go see Four Seasons subscription every year. So that was really neat too, to be in an audience. And then you knew you had like people like us, probably, right, that are artists, and we're here to kind of follow the story and see dance be sort of the language to tell the story for us. But then we have people there that are probably dancers, or know the dancers, or love seeing ballet, contemporary, etc., different specialized pieces. So we have those types of audience members. And then also this being an experience where you're given a glass of bubbly or there's the bars open all the time. This could just be a date night or like a girls' night, right? And you saw a lot of people, because it's a voyeuristic experience is how they market it. You saw people taking so many pictures and videos. And so our objective may have been to be like, oh, let's get immersed in this piece. Some other people's objective would be like, oh, I'd like to see some professional dance. Some people's would be like, oh, I'd like to have a fun night out. That's different. That kind of makes us feel elite. And so that was really neat too, from like a performance perspective. It's like you had the audience performing differently or acting differently alongside the piece too. So that was a very interesting atmosphere and environment to be a part of, right? Absolutely.
But like, once again, like, those minor things we just spoke about the music and the MC coming on once in the middle, just to say cycle one done, cycle two beginning. Like, those are minor nitpicks. Like, like this piece,
this was like
99.9% of the time was hitting on all cylinders. Like, Julia has just done such an incredible job,
stunning,
crafting two different stories. And I mean, as a director, it's like, you think keeping one story is tough in a rehearsal. Try doing two separate stories in a building where you're trying to maximize your space. Try having that go through your brain as a director, and it's like.
And I know through talking to some of the cast members that the Great Hall is a venue in Toronto that is booked solid. Post this weekend, they were able to slice in to use the space, but then it's booked until next January. So they probably didn't have as much time as they would have liked in the actual space too. With with a show that literally depends on space,
Yes.
right? On making sure you hit every mark. Otherwise, you right. So that adds a whole nother layer of creative brilliance to. I wish there was a more weighted words to say that, because it's superhuman. Like,
yeah.
Anyways, should we close this golden paged book?
Yes, let's close the book, as it were.
So again, thank you so much to Julia Cratchley and the cast and crew and company of A Grimm Night, TranscenDance, the latest project. We look forward to immersing ourselves in more projects, hopefully down the line. And listeners and viewers, if you have the opportunity to experience something like this, absolutely go. It is worth the time and money. And it's something different and something refreshing, especially from what we've been wading through these last couple of years. So sending all the love and support to these fantastic artists. And I think this is where we'll close our golden page storybook.
Yes.
So thank you again to our viewers and listeners who have made it this far. Certainly didn't have anything lack of talking about today, Mac. So as per usual, we will post details about the show below. And as we usually sign out, go ahead and follow us on follow Cup of Hemlock on all of our pages, our YouTube account. Give us a subscribe, a like, a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Catch us on Apple Podcasts. And then, of course, our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Go ahead and give us a follow, a like, a Cup of Hemlock Theatre. And Mac, where can our viewers catch up with you as always?
So they can find me at Mackenzie Horner on all social media platforms. You can follow my other antics with Before the Downbeat, a musical podcast, on all social media platforms as well. When this episode comes out, we will be getting ready to release our penultimate episode of season 4, which is the iconic musical My Fair Lady.
Lovely.
Yes. There you go. Exactly. So we'll be doing that, and after that, it'll be season wrap up for that, and then we're going to a bit of a hiatus because we've been basically since COVID started, we've been virtual the whole time, so we've had very little downtime between seasons to kind of breathe. So I know Autumn and I are going to be taking a bit of a mini hiatus there to kind of get caught up on some season 5 material. So let's just take some breathing room. It's just to
rest is key.
Rest up a bit before we get into the next season there. But check out all the great material. Jill came on for an episode about Avenue Q. We have reviews of West Side Story, Dear Evan Hansen, Tick Tick Boom, Cats. We do all types of fun stuff there. We just did our 50th episode this season with Phantom of the Opera. We did a whole 2-hour conversation about that musical, which once again had very atmospheric vibes with this, with white masks and candelabra, so it all ties back together. There you go.
There you go.
But fun. Jill, where can people find and follow you and all your antics that you get up to? Because you're off to fun stuff, aren't you?
Live theater, woohoo. Yes, you can follow me on my artist Instagram account at Jillian.Robinson96. And by the time this episode goes up, I will have just finished the read through of the remount of the Rapunzel pantomime that I had the honor of being a part of this past winter. We are remounting it at the Witchwood Theatre through a TYT theater, directed by the fabulous Evan Harkai, written by Evan Harkai and Thea Fitzjames. And a majority of the cast is coming back. We are onboarding some new fresh faces to this next iteration of the project too. And that'll be going up May 13th to June 5th on the weekends. So go ahead and keep up with my page there, and I will keep you up to date with ticket links. And I have some other kind of fun goodies coming up down the line too that I won't spoil just yet. But give me a follow there if you'd like to keep up with me. And on that note, friends, as always, stay safe, stay healthy, allow yourself to get wrapped up in fairy tales and anything that fits your fancy. Exactly. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Cheers,
Thanks,
folks.
everybody. Bye.